Now we have an update on our top story tonight. As we told you, 25-year-old Alicia Reynolds disappeared this weekend. Her abandoned car was...
Approximately 20 women who came forward after Mrs. Reynolds' disappearance.
I feared the worst.
In the creepy saga of the Route 29 stalker, this mysterious character, linked to a brutal murder in Culpeper County, Virginia, had everyone on edge. Alicia Showalter Reynolds got caught up in this twisted game along Route 29, spinning a seriously messed up story that had the whole community talking. In today's video, we'll be delving into the Route 29 stalker case, shedding light on the victims of these unsolved incidents. Stick around because at the end of the video, we'll also explore potential suspects and discuss who we might think is involved. Route 29 is a highway that stretches from Pensacola, Florida to Silver Spring, Maryland. It was originally constructed in October of 1925. Currently, U.S. Route 29 stretches around 1,036 miles up and down the East Coast. On Saturday, March 2nd, 1996, 25-year-old Alicia Showalter Reynolds bid farewell to her husband Mark and set out around 7:30 a.m. Alicia, a graduate pharmacology student at Johns Hopkins University, residing in Baltimore, Maryland, had a strong commitment to research, notably contributing to a project developing vaccines for less developed countries. That morning, she embarked on a 150-mile drive to spend the day shopping with her mom, Sadie, in Charlottesville, Virginia. The journey was expected to take approximately 3.5 hours. She was supposed to meet her mom at the mall by 10:30 in the morning. Her mother, Sadie, waited anxiously for over an hour, hoping for Alicia's arrival. Concerned, she called Mark, who suggested weather conditions may have delayed Alicia. After several hours with no sign of her daughter, Sadie left, disappointed but grateful for Alicia's willingness to make the trip.
Right about 11 o'clock, she wasn't there, and I said, "This is not like Alicia."
In 1996, cell phones were not as common, and Sadie, who had recently acquired one, couldn't contact Alicia. Waiting outside the mall, anxiety grew as time passed, and by 2 p.m., Sadie reluctantly accepted that Alicia wasn't coming, having been 3.5 hours late. Around 6 p.m., Alicia's white Mercury Tracer was discovered 50 miles away, parked on the shoulder of Route 29 near Culpeper, Virginia. A napkin under the windshield wiper hinted at car trouble, but an inspection revealed that there was no issues. Inside the car, Sadie's cell phone number was found on a piece of paper, given to Alicia the night before for the drive. The next day, March 3rd, a roadblock was set up, and witnesses reported seeing Alicia along Route 29 with her car hood raised, talking to a man with a dark pickup truck, possibly a blue or green Nissan. Descriptions indicated he was between 5'10" and 6 foot tall, aged 35 to 45, with a medium build and light to medium brown hair. Subsequently, 23 women came forward, revealing encounters with an unidentified man between February and March 1996 along Route 29. He attempted to get them to pull over by honking, flashing lights, and claiming car issues. Some ignored him, prompting furious reactions, while a few who stopped were taken to a payphone without incident.
The only instances where we have found that the individual became agitated were those instances where women either refused his assistance or refused to pull over for him.
These incidents occurred between Manassas and Charlottesville, Virginia. Witnesses also mentioned a green tarp and toolbox in the back of the man's truck. A week before Alicia's disappearance, a woman from Quantico, Virginia, reported a similar encounter where the man driving a small blue truck attacked her. Police believe he is the same man seen with Alicia. Developing a profile based on witness accounts, police suspect the individual works in a blue-collar job, wears a wedding ring, and may use the name Larry Breeden. They believe this might not be his real name, and if he is in a relationship, it's likely troubled, especially around the time of Alicia's disappearance. Police think he appears ordinary, blending in like a neighbor. On May 7th, 2 months after Alicia vanished, her body was found in a wooded area 15 miles southeast of her last sighting. The suspected killer, believed to have acted out a sexual fantasy along U.S. Route 29, has a specific preference for small, brunette, white women in their 20s. Special Agent Larry McCann, a behavioral scientist with the FBI, believes Alicia's murder may have resulted from a sexual assault fantasy gone awry.
This entire incident is based upon the perpetrator having a fantasy and then living this fantasy in his mind over and over and over.
There are 4 more Route 29 potential victims that we're going to talk about. Julianne Williams and Laura Lolly Winans. Julianne Williams, affectionately known as Julie, hailed from St. Cloud, Minnesota. At the age of 24, with a profound passion for nature, she pursued a geology degree in college, aspiring her to share the love of the outdoors with others. Laura Winans, fondly called Lolly by close friends, was a 26-year-old from Unity, Maine, and was deeply connected to nature. As she pursued certification as a guide, her goal was to impart her enthusiasm for the outdoors to others. Both women, seasoned campers and hikers, shared an intense bond with nature. Unfortunately, this connection led them to an unfortunate encounter. Engaging in what they loved, the women met a tragic end amid the picturesque wilderness they cherished. On a camping trip to Shenandoah National Park on May 19th, Williams and Winans, partners in life, were expected back by the 28th. Concern arose when Williams was reported missing on May 31st, after her roommate contacted her father, revealing her delayed return. After a day of search efforts, the lifeless bodies of the 2 women were discovered at a creekside campsite just off the Appalachian Trail, located near milepost 42 along Skyline Drive, close to the popular tourist spot Skyland Resort. The women were found bound and gagged, their throats brutally slit. Due to their gender and sexual orientation, this case instilled fear among campers and hikers, highlighting that the wilderness wasn't inherently safer than civilization. The impact extended beyond women, reaching the gay community. Investigators grappled with determining if the crime was a random occurrence or if the women were targeted based on gender or sexual preferences. This tragedy prompted heightened safety awareness on the trail and spurred the call for legislation protecting individuals targeted for gender and sexual orientation. The next is Anne Carolyn McDaniel, 20 years old. She was last seen leaving a group home in the town of Orange on September 18, 1996. Her burned body was found 4 days later, within 10 miles of where Reynolds' body was found. Then there's Samantha Ann Clark, 19 years old, disappeared in the final hours of September 13th, 2010, or in the early hours of the next morning. She left her home in the town of Orange, telling her brother, "I'll be back." She never returned. Additional cases along the U.S. Route 29 corridor, including Sophia Silva, Kristen and Katie Lisk, raised suspicions, but the suspected killer, Richard Mark Ebenitz, took his own life before facing charges. Other unsolved cases in the region add to the mystery and the tragedy. Despite over 2 decades and 10,000 leads, this perpetrator remains at large. Now let's get into the reason that I even made this video, and that is because Rex Heuermann, the alleged Long Island serial killer, could be a potential Route 29 suspect. Not only does Heuermann resemble the sketch, there are some more creepy connections between Rex Heuermann and the murders that happened in this region. There are other possible coincidences too. Property records reveal that Heuermann's mother has resided in Palmyra, Virginia since at least 1994. That's about 50 miles where Alicia was last seen alive. Furthermore, in a deposition for an unrelated lawsuit, Heuermann admitted to traveling to Virginia on multiple occasions throughout 2018. Law enforcement has not commented on whether Heuermann is being considered a suspect in Alicia's case. Alicia's little sister and twin brother think that this should be looked into.
It was hellacious. You know, in the process of that, I moved from Nashville to Dallas to start marriage, start residency. Really, really hard. I mean, residency is hard enough, and I had all that to deal with, plus being married. It was really, really hard. It took a toll. Yeah, I actually reached out to them, I think back in March of this year, and they were pretty quick to call me back because they had never talked to me before. And they were like, you know, okay, we got someone else from the family calling. And you know, I tried to bring up some of these other technologies and kind of got well, you know, we've got very limited DNA and we're sending it off to these other labs, and some of these things, just some of these other cases that I wasn't sure if they knew what I was really talking about or what. It kind of felt like I was getting somewhat the brush off. I mean, I felt good because they were still pursuing the case, but at the same time, I'm like, can't we be doing more? My message to them is nothing you've done has solved this case. Let's do something different. Let's start thinking outside the box. You know, let's look at different technology or try different.
That interview was done in 2022, so maybe we will get some results with the DNA with that new technology that they have going on now. They only need a very, very, very small amount. Next, we're going to hear from a man who Rex Heuermann hired to mow his mother's grass there in Virginia. Let's hear about his interaction with Mr. Heuermann.
Dolores. It was just basically go clean up the yard because it was all overgrown. And I kind of remember him complaining, like he had a big dumpster there. You know, he asked us to throw some stuff in the dumpster and he didn't like the way we put it in. A month later, still no payment. Another month later, still no payment. When I saw him, on TV, I was like, that looks familiar. And then, put 2 and 2 together. And
Sample also remembers seeing a certain Chevrolet Avalanche parked right outside the home that he believes is the same vehicle that led detectives to Heuermann's doorstep in Massapequa.
Even though there are many unsolved cases in this area, the last one we're going to discuss is Cheryl Warner. Cheryl Warner was killed on December 18th, 2005. She had been on the phone with her dad when a man knocked on the door claiming that his car broke down. She was later found tied up and hanging in the basement with her home set on fire. There was actually a man, Ricky Gray, who was convicted of her murder, but DNA later cleared him.
Nearly 9 years ago, Ricky Gray was one of the men convicted and accused of murders before that. Tonight we've learned police are re-examining one of those cases. Our Greg McQuaid is here to tell us why.
Well, this is video. That's why. Culpeper deputies released it just this morning. They say it's of murder victim Cheryl Warner shopping at the Belk store before her death. You see her talking to an unknown man at the door before leaving the store, and investigators think he was the last person to see her alive.
Zoinks. This is when it gets really creepy weird. Wait for it. Look at the video.
The 37-year-old was found shot and hanging in her Culpeper basement that same day, December 18th, 2005. The home was also set on fire. Ricky Gray was once indicted in her death, but years later, prosecutors set aside the charge based on DNA evidence at the scene that they say did not belong to Gray. According to Warner's father, she called him when she got home from shopping and they were talking about football when a man knocked on her door saying he was having car trouble and needed her telephone. Her father said the man was not alone and Cheryl Warner was never heard alive again. Again, this is video nearly 9 years old at Christmas time from the Belk store in Culpeper. If you remember anything about that day or about this scene, or you recognize anyone in it.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I can tell you right the fuck now, I recognize someone in it. Let's take a look at that video again. So there you see Cheryl with the white bag. She's got a sweater on. She's heading out towards the door. You see a man to the left in a gray shirt just beyond the green tablecloth. He looks like an ogre. He follows her out the door, maybe like 2005. She heads home. She gets on the phone with her dad, and then a man shows up to her door with car trouble, and she's brutally murdered and found horrifically. If it was Rex Heuermann and he wasn't alone, who was with him? Do you think Asa was with him? This is getting weird, folks.